Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cat Tales, a Warrior Cats reread podcast. As always, I'm your host, Coffee. It's been a few weeks. I hope everyone had a relatively restful holiday season. I know I have, and I'm already launching back into the chaos of working 3 jobs and doing this podcast. If you are a returning listener, thank you. If you're a new listener, thank you for being here and joining me on my rereading journey through the Warrior series by Erin Hunter. Today we will be starting the 3rd book in the first series called The Prophecies Begin. The 3rd book is titled Forest of Secrets. There will be recap material in the first chapter or 2 of this book, so fret not if you forgot what happened in the last book, but I'm happy to be here and excited. Alright, so we're going to get started by first reading the blurb on the back for a little introduction of what we can expect from this book. So it starts with, "Fire alone can save our clan." As always, that's the prophecy that's been repeated since book 1. Tensions are still high among the warrior clans that roam the forest, and as allegiances shift, it becomes harder than ever to know whom to trust. Fireheart is determined to find out the truth about the mysterious death of the former ThunderClan deputy Redtail, but as he searches for answers, he uncovers secrets that some believe would be better left hidden. Do with that what you will. I think this book is probably my second favorite in the first arc. I think my favorite is book 5. So we're going to get into the prologue. Quote, "Cold gripped the forest fields and moorland like an icy claw. Snow covered everything, glittering faintly under a new moon. Nothing broke the silence in the forest except for the occasional soft rush of snow sliding from the branches of trees and the faint rasping of dried reeds when the wind swept through them. Even the murmur of the river was stilled by the ice that stretched from bank to bank. There was a flicker of movement at the edge of the river. A large tomcat, his bracken-colored fur fluffed up against the cold, emerged from the reeds. He shook snow impatiently from his paws as he sank into the soft drifts with every step. In front of him, 2 tiny kits struggled forward with faint mews of distress. They floundered in the powdery snow, the fur on their legs and belly matted into icy clumps, but every time they tried to stop, the tomcat nudged them on. The 3 cats trudged along the river until it widened out, and they drew level with a small island not far from the bank. Thick beds of reeds surrounded it, their dry stems poking up through the ice. Stunted, leafless willow trees concealed the center of the island behind snow-covered boughs. Almost there, the bracken-colored Tom meowed encouragingly. Follow me." He slid down the bank into a narrow, frozen pathway through the reeds and leaped onto the dry, crisp earth of the island. The bigger of the 2 kits scrambled after him, but the smaller one collapsed on the ice and crouched there, mewing pitifully. After a moment's pause, the tomcat jumped down beside it and tried to nudge it to its paws, but it was too exhausted to move. The tomcat gave its ears a lick, roughly comforting the helpless scrap, and then picked it up by the scruff of the neck and carried it onto the island. Beyond the willow trees was a stretch of open ground broken by bushes. Snow covered the earth here, crisscrossed by the paw marks of many cats. The clearing seemed deserted, but bright eyes gleamed from shelter, watching the tomcat as he led the way to the largest clump of bushes and through the outer wall of tangled branches. The icy chill in the air outside gave way to the warmth of the nursery and the smell of milk. In a deep nest of moss and heather, a gray she-cat was suckling a single tabby kit. She raised her head as the tomcat drew closer and gently set down the kit he was carrying. So, we learn that this cat is named Oakheart. So if you remember, he is the RiverClan deputy. Or was, in this case. This must be a time when he was still alive. He asks the Grey Queen, who is named Greypool, if she will take the kits that he brought. She knows that they're not RiverClan, and asks where he got them, and he tells her he found them in the forest, noticeably not meeting her eyes. This is a tell. He could be lying. Greypool doesn't believe him and says, "Oakheart, don't talk to me as if I'm mouse-brained. What cat would abandon her kits in the forest, especially in weather like this?" Which is a good question to ask. And Oakheart guesses it could have been rogues or 2-legs, and he says he couldn't just leave them there. Then he immediately guilt-trips her by saying, "Greypool, please. Your other kits died, and these will die too, unless you help them." Honestly, crazy work. Like, hi, kitty. My cat came in. I'm recording in my bathroom right now because it's the quietest place in my house. And my cat just came in and started meowing at me. She does. She's like, Mama, why are you talking again?" Anyway, back to warriors. He's kind of guilt-tripping Greypool by being like, well, I know your kids died, so why don't you take these strange outside kids to take care of? Which is, I can't decide if it's nice or rude. It's a little bit insensitive, in my opinion. But whatever. I mean, something similar happened with Brindleface in the last book, where Fireheart asked her if she could take care of Cloudkit, and, like, one of her kits had died or something. So, yeah, I don't know. Greypool agrees to take them, but still questions who would abandon their kits in the forest. Oakheart tells her he didn't steal them, and Greypool does believe him, but knows that he's not telling the whole truth. Oakheart says, quote, "I've told you all you need to know." So that's a dead giveaway that he's lying. He's kind of a terrible liar. Not fooling anyone, my boy. Greypool tries to argue again, knowing that a mother would never willingly abandon her kits, but Oakheart tells her that it's really not good weather to go searching for the mother, and Greypool argues again, but Oakheart finally cuts her off, just begging her to just take care of the kits, and then promises to bring her some fresh kill, and he leaves the den. He's done arguing at this point. So, now Greypool doesn't really have a choice. Quote, "When he had gone, Greypool bent her head over the kits, rasping her tongue over their fur to warm them. The melting snow had washed away most of their scent, though Greypool could still make out the odors of the forest, of dead leaves and frostbitten earth. And there was something beneath that, fainter still. Greypool paused in her licking. Had she really sensed that, or was she imagining things? Dipping her head again, she opened her mouth to breathe in the kit's scents. Her eyes grew wider, and she stared unblinking into the dark shadows that edged the nursery. She was not wrong. The fur of these two motherless kits, whose origins Oakheart refused to explain, unmistakably carried the scent of an enemy clan." And that's the end of the prologue. So, I wonder which clan. Oakheart did say the forest, so we can figure out that it's not Wind Clan. So that leaves Shadow Clan or Thunder Clan. I don't know, since there's a forest right next to River Clan, doesn't seem like he came that far with young kits. You can kind of deduce that they're from ThunderClan, but unsure. So, let's not jump to any conclusions. We have barely started the book, and we're going to see how this might become relevant later, because right now, doesn't seem that relevant. But anyway, getting into chapter 1. Quote, "The icy wind whirled snow into Fireheart's face as he struggled down the ravine toward the ThunderClan camp, the mouse he had just killed gripped firmly in his jaws. The flakes were falling so thickly that he could scarcely see where he was going. His mouth watered as the prey scent of mouse filled his nostrils. He hadn't eaten since the previous night, a grim sign of how scarce prey was in Leafbear. Hunger clawed at his belly, but Fireheart would not break the warrior code. The clan must be fed first. So, he's come a long way since he ate that rabbit with Yellowfang in Book 1. A glow of pride briefly drove off the chill from the snow that matted his flame-colored coat as Fireheart remembered the battle that had taken place only 3 days before. He had joined the other ThunderClan warriors to help support WindClan when the Moorland Cats were attacked by the other two clans in the forest. So if you remember, the last chapter of Book 2 was a huge battle between all 4 clans in WindClan territory. Many cats had been injured in that battle, so it was even more important for those who could still hunt to bring home prey. As Fireheart pushed his way through the gorse tunnel leading into the camp, he dislodged snow from the spiky branches above, and he flicked his ears as the cold lumps fell on his head. The thorn trees around the camp gave some shelter from the wind, but the clearing in the center of the camp was deserted. All the cats preferred to stay in their dens to keep warm when the snow lay this thick. Broken tree stumps and the branches of a fallen tree poked above the covering of snow. A single line of paw prints crossed from the apprentice's den to the bramble thicket where the kits were cared for. Seeing the trail, Fireheart could not help remembering that he was without an apprentice now, since Thunderpaw had been injured beside the Thunderpath. So yeah, in classic young adult novel form, there's the Fire and Ice recap for you. There will be more of that, but I'm gonna skip over it because honestly, you guys are smart. If you're listening to the podcast, especially in quick succession, you don't need a recap, So Fireheart goes into camp, and he puts his prey on the fresh kill pile. Tigerclaw shows up and tells him to pause hunting, because Blue Star wants him and Graystripe to come to the gathering. Tigerclaw tells him to eat now, and they'll leave at moonrise. Then he says, quote, "Just make sure you remember which clan you belong to at the gathering," he hissed, which is interesting. Girl, why is he yelling at Fireheart and not Graystripe for literally running away in battle? Fireheart felt his fur bristle as anger flared inside him. "What makes you say that?" he demanded boldly. "Do you think I would be disloyal to my own clan?" Tigerclaw turned to face him, and Fireheart tried hard not to flinch at the menace in the cat's tense shoulders. I saw you in the last battle. The deputy's voice was a low growl, and his ears were flattened against his head as he spat. I saw you let that RiverClan warrior escape. Fireheart winced, his mind flashing back to the battle in the WindClan camp. What Tigerclaw said was true. Fireheart had allowed a RiverClan warrior to flee without a scratch, but not out of cowardice or disloyalty. The warrior had been Silverstream. Unknown to the rest of ThunderClan, Fireheart's best friend Graystripe was in love with her, and Fireheart could not bring himself to wound her. And then, more recap, Fireheart did his best to talk Graystripe out of seeing Silverstream, but at the same time, he doesn't want to betray Graystripe. Fireheart thinks Tigerclaw has no right to accuse any cat of disloyalty, because at the big battle on WindClan territory, Tigerclaw stood on the edge watching while Fireheart fought for his life against a RiverClan warrior and turned away instead of helping him. And that's not the worst accusation Fireheart can make. He suspects Tigerclaw of murdering Redtail, the former ThunderClan deputy, and even planning to get rid of their leader herself, even though there's not really any proof of that. So Fireheart says, if you think I'm disloyal, tell Bluestar. Tigerclaw drew back his lips in a snarl and dropped into a half-crouch, sliding out his long claws. I don't need to bother Bluestar, he hissed. I can deal with a kitty pet like you. He stared at Fireheart for a moment longer. Fireheart realized with a jolt that there was a trace of fear as well as distrust in the blazing amber eyes. Tigerclaw wonders how much I know, he thought suddenly. So then there's more recap about Ravenpaw. Ravenpaw was Tigerclaw's old apprentice. He had directly witnessed the murder of Redtail. Tigerclaw had been conspiring and trying to kill Ravenpaw to keep him quiet, so Fireheart and Graystripe took Ravenpaw to live with Barley, a loner who lives on a two-leg farm on the opposite side of WindClan territory, away from the clans. In the last book, Fireheart tried to tell Ravenpaw's story to Bluestar, but she refused to believe that her deputy could be guilty of such a thing. As he glared at Tigerclaw, Fireheart's frustration returned. He felt as if a tree had fallen and pinned him to the ground. Yeah, so a lot of recap so far. At this point, if you haven't read books 1 and 2 or listened to the podcast, that's kind of on you. So, Tigerclaw turns away, Graystripe comes out from the warrior's den, and lightly scolds him for picking a fight with Tigerclaw. Fireheart says, no cat has the right to call me disloyal. Graystripe apologizes, knowing that Tigerclaw is only picking fights with him because of Silverstream. But Fireheart tells him that Tigerclaw is the real problem, which, okay, is fair. Tigerclaw is very jobless and just is, stalking Fireheart and, to an extent, Graystripe. But also, Fireheart did just spend an entire book being mad at Graystripe for seeing Silverstream. So, and now he's, all of a sudden just okay with it. His switch up was so quick. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, it makes sense for his character, but it just makes me mad because he spent literally an entire book being mad at Graystripe, and now he's just, not mad anymore. And it's okay, not only was Graystripe being disloyal to the clan, but he was also being a terrible friend in the last book. So, anyway, I digress. So, Fireheart and Graystripe pick out prey to eat in the warrior's den, and they groom each other. Fireheart is relieved that they're friends again. Quote, even though Fireheart's still worried about his friend's forbidden affair, since the battle, he and Graystripe had rekindled their friendship so it was as close as before. They needed to trust each other if they were to survive the long season of Leaffair, and even more than that, Fireheart knew he needed Graystripe's support against Tigerclaw's growing hostility. So the rekindling is, one, very quick. It literally happens in the last chapter of the last book, and they're basically just hey, I'm sorry, me too. Okay, we're besties again. That's literally what happened. And two, I guess any more rekindling happened off-screen. I don't know how much time has passed. Well, maybe they say it. Okay, it's only been 3 days since the giant battle in WindClan territory. So it hasn't been that long. So I guess if they had any important conversations or figured stuff out, it happened off-screen. Which, okay, whatever. I guess there's bigger fish to fry. But it's giving the Duffer Brothers writing. If you haven't, well, everyone's heard of Stranger Things, the Netflix series, but there's a lot of criticism about the Duffer Brothers and their writing with the last season. It is terrible, honestly. I've watched every episode except for the finale, and I'm gonna watch it just because I've watched everything up until this point, but I already know what happens because spoilers are all over the internet. But anyway, there's a lot of posts online where it's the Duffer Brothers say this happened off screen, this happened off screen, this happened off screen, and it's okay, what's the point of developing characters then? What's the point of these characters if we don't see any development? On screen, so quote unquote, because it's a book. But anyway. Yeah, Erin Hunter and the Duffer Brothers should meet up for a coffee and talk about how to make the most, like, I don't know what the word is. They need to team up and write something just mid. Fireheart and Graystripe discuss what could happen at the gathering, especially with WindClan and ShadowClan. RiverClan are still struggling to find food, and the shortage of prey is a problem for all 4 clans, because it's still Leaf Bear, aka Winter at this point. So, quote, growing drowsy under the steady rasp of Graystripe's tongue, Fireheart jumped at the rustle of branches outside the den. Tigerclaw entered, followed by Darkstripe and Longtail. All 3 of them glowered at Fireheart as they settled in a huddle closer to the center of the bush. Fireheart watched them through slitted eyes, wishing that he could make out their conversation. It was too easy to imagine they were plotting against him. Fireheart's muscles tensed as he realized that he would never be safe within his own clan, while Tigerclaw's treachery remained a secret. "What's the matter?" asked Graystripe, lifting his head. Fireheart stretched, trying to relax again. "I don't trust them," he murmured, flicking his ears in the direction of Tigerclaw and the others. "I don't blame you," meowed Graystripe. If Tigerclaw ever found out about Silverstream, he shuddered. Fireheart pressed closer to his side, comforting him, while his ears still strained to catch what Tigerclaw was saying. He thought he heard his own name and was tempted to creep a little closer, but just then he caught Longtail's eye. "What are you staring at, kitty pet?" hissed the tabby warrior. "ThunderClan only wants loyal cats." Deliberately, he turned his back on Fireheart, so still acting like a high school bully. Fireheart sprang to his paws at once. "And who gave you the right to question our loyalty?" he spat. Longtail ignored him. "That does it," Fireheart mewed in a fierce undertone to Graystripe. "It's obvious that Tigerclaw is spreading rumors about me. But what can you do?" Graystripe sounded resigned to the deputy's hostility. "I want to talk to Ravenpaw again," Fireheart meowed. "He might remember something else about the battle, something I could use to convince Bluestar. But Ravenpaw lives at the Two-Leg Farm now. You'd have to go all the way across WindClan territory. How would you explain being out of the camp for so long? It would only make Tigerclaw's lies seem like the truth." Fireheart knew he was willing to take that risk. He had never asked Ravenpaw for any details about how Redtail had died in the battle against RiverClan all those moons ago. At the time, it had seemed more important to get the apprentice out of Tigerclaw's way. Now he knew he had to find out exactly what Ravenpaw saw, because he was becoming more and more certain that his friend must know something that could prove just how dangerous Tigerclaw was to the clan. "I'll go tonight," Fireheart meowed softly. "After the gathering, I'm going to slip away. If I bring back fresh kill, I can say I've been hunting." "You're taking a big risk," mewed Graystripe, giving Fireheart's ear a quick and affectionate lick. "But Tigerclaw is my problem, too. If you're determined to go, then I'm coming with you." So, finally, Graystripe is acting like an actual friend again. That's very nice to see, because last book was honestly like, oh my god, it was like Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill. It was really hard to get through, because they were just constantly fighting. So, ThunderClan goes to the gathering. Cats from all the clans are very tense, kind of like glaring at each other, shoulders up, hackles raised, just kind of on the verge of fighting, but not really, because you can't fight at a gathering. Graystripe sees Silverstream immediately, and Fireheart tells him to make sure to be careful who sees him with Silverstream, basically alluding to Tigerclaw. Whitestorm asks Bluestar if she's going to tell the clans about them sheltering Brokentail. So another plot point from the last book is Brokentail, the former leader of ShadowClan, attacked ThunderClan's camp, and they captured him, and Yellowfang blinded him. So he's now a prisoner of ThunderClan because they did the stupid, "we can't be as bad as he was" thing, and just refused to kill him, even after he literally created a child army and allegedly killed kids as well. So it's like, yeah, guys, we're not going to kill Hitler because we can't be as bad as him. It's like, you're not winning any morality war here. Like, anyway, that's just my opinion. Bluestar decides to not tell the other clans about Brokentail. Tigerclaw questions if she's ashamed, and Bluestar says, quote, "ThunderClan has no need to be ashamed for showing mercy, but I see no reason to go looking for trouble." So, yeah, it is kind of a tough decision here. You know, I guess, yeah, you don't need to be ashamed for showing mercy in general, but I think in this case you can make an exception. But I get not wanting trouble, especially after that big battle with the other clans. She tells ThunderClan to keep quiet about Brokentail, because it is a clan matter. And then she flicks her tail to signal the ThunderClan cats can join the other clans. Fireheart goes after them, quote, "As he slid out of the bushes into the clearing, he saw that Tigerclaw had stopped close by and was giving him a suspicious stare. Graystripe," Fireheart hissed quietly over his shoulder, "I don't think you should go off with Silverstream tonight. Tigerclaw's already..." Fireheart suddenly realized that Graystripe was no longer beside him. Looking around, he saw his friend disappearing behind the great rock. A heartbeat or two later, Silverstream skirted around a group of ShadowClan cats and followed him. I mean, how are they not gonna get caught? Like, the Great Rock it's not a 2D thing, it's 3D. There's all sides. There's probably gonna be cats on all sides of the rock, so are people just not gonna see them? Do people not go on certain sides of the rock? I don't know. Fireheart sighed. He glanced at Tigerclaw, wondering if the deputy had seen them go. But Tigerclaw had padded away to join One Whisker from WindClan, and Fireheart let the fur lie flat on his shoulders again. Pacing restlessly across the clearing, Fireheart found himself near a group of elders, Patchpelt from ThunderClan, and others he did not know, crouching beneath a glossy-leaved holly bush, where the snow did not lie so thickly. Keeping one eye out for Graystripe, Fireheart settled down to listen to their conversation. I remember a leaf bear even worse than this. It was an old black Tom who spoke, his muzzle turned to silver and his flank scarred from many a fight. He had the scent of WindClan on his short, patchy fur. The river was frozen for more than 3 moons. You're right, Crowfur, a tabby queen agreed. And prey was scarcer, too, even for RiverClan. For a heartbeat, Fireheart felt surprised that 2 elders from recently hostile clans could talk calmly without spitting hatred at each other. But then they were elders, he reflected. They must have seen many battles in their long lives. Young warriors today, the old black cat added with a glance at Fireheart. They don't know what hardship is. Okay, boomer. Fireheart scuffled among the dead leaves under the bush and tried to look respectful. Patchpelt, crouched close to him, gave him a friendly flick with his tail. That must have been the season when Bluestar lost her kits, recalled the ThunderClan elder. Bluestar's kits keep coming up, so I don't think it's a coincidence. But I'm gonna keep quiet. Fireheart pricked up his ears. He remembered Dappletail saying something once before about Bluestar's kits, which were born just before she became clan deputy, but he had never learned how many kits she had had or how old they were when they died. And do you remember the thaw of that leaf bear? Crowfur interrupted Fireheart's thoughts, his eyes unfocused as he lost himself to his memories. The river and the gorge rose nearly as far as the badger sets. Patchpelt shivered. I remember it well. ThunderClan couldn't cross the stream to come here for the gathering. Cats were drowned, the RiverClan queen remembered sadly. Prey, too, Crowfur added. The cats who survived nearly starved. May StarClan grant it's not so bad this season. Patchpelt mewed fervently. Crowfur spat. These young cats would never cope. We were tougher in those days. Fireheart could not help protesting. We have strong warriors now. Who asked your opinion? Growled the cranky old Tom. You're hardly more than a kit. But we... Fireheart broke off as the air was filled with a shrill yowl and all the cats fell silent. He turned his head to see 4 cats on top of the great rock, silhouettes in the silver moonlight. Shh, hissed Patchpelt. The meeting's about to start. He twitched his ears at Fireheart and purred softly. Take no notice of Crowfur. He'd find fault with StarClan. Very funny phrasing from Patchpelt here. Crowfur is just a hater for the love of the game. It's like that one old person you know who just complains about everything. Fireheart gave Patchpelt a grateful look, tucked his paws under him, and settled down to listen. Tallstar, the WindClan leader, began by announcing how his cats were recovering after the recent battle against RiverClan and ShadowClan. One of our elders has died, he meowed, but all our warriors will live. To fight another day, he added meaningfully. Nightstar flattened his ears and narrowed his eyes, while Crookedstar let out a threatening growl from deep in his throat. Fireheart's fur prickled. If the leaders started to fight, their cats would fight too. Had it ever happened at a gathering? He wondered. Surely not even Nightstar, ShadowClan's bold new leader, would risk the anger of StarClan by breaking the sacred truce. As Fireheart apprehensively watched the bristling cats, Bluestar stepped forward. This is good news, Tallstar, she meowed smoothly. All of us should rejoice to hear that WindClan grows strong again. Her blue eyes glowed in the moonlight as she glanced at the leaders of ShadowClan and RiverClan. Nightstar turned away from her gaze, and Crookedstar dipped his head, his expression unreadable. And then gives more recap about WindClan and ShadowClan. ShadowClan, under Broken Star's rule, drove WindClan away in the first book. Fireheart and Graystripe went to rescue them in the second book. And Fireheart thinks about rescuing WindClan, and it reminds him of going to see Ravenpaw after the gathering. He's not looking forward to the journey, but he thinks to himself, at least WindClan are friendly toward ThunderClan, so we shouldn't get attacked on the way. The gathering is peaceful from then on. Bluestar announces Dustpelt and Sandstorm as new warriors, and she does not mention Brokentail. So everything's good after that. The gathering ends. Fireheart meets up with Graystripe after the gathering. There you are, Graystripe called, his yellow eyes shining. Fireheart could see that he had enjoyed the gathering, though he doubted that his friend had listened to much of the talk. Are you ready? He meowed. To go and see Ravenpaw, you mean? Graystripe has not lost his loudness, I see. Not so loud, Fireheart hissed, anxiously looking round. Yes, I'm ready, Graystripe mewed more softly. I can't say I'm looking forward to it. Still, anything to get Tigerclaw out of my fur. Unless you've had a better idea? Fireheart shook his head. This is the only way. The hollow was still full of cats preparing to leave in 4 directions. No cat seemed to pay any attention to Fireheart and Graystripe until they had almost reached the slope that led to WindClan's upland territory. Then a meow sounded behind them. Hey, Fireheart, where are you going? It was Sandstorm. Fireheart shot a desperate glance at Graystripe. We're going the long way around, he improvised quickly. Mudclaw from WindClan told us about a warren of young rabbits just inside our territory. We thought we'd bring back some fresh kill. Suddenly alarmed by the thought that Sandstorm might offer to come with them, he added, Tell Bluestar, will you, if she asks where we are? Sure, Sandstorm yawned, showing a mouthful of sharp white teeth. I'll think about you dashing after rabbits when I'm curled up in a nice warm nest. She patted off with a flick of her tail. Fireheart was relieved. He didn't like lying to her. Let's go, he meowed to Graystripe, before any other cat sees us. The two young warriors slid into the shelter of the bushes and crept up the slope. At the top, Fireheart paused for a moment, looking back to make sure they had not been followed. Then he and Graystripe bounded over the rim of the hollow and raced toward the moorland, and beyond that, the two-leg farm. This is the only way, Fireheart repeated to himself as he ran. He had to find out the truth. Not just for Redtail and Ravenpaw, but for the sake of the whole clan. Tigerclaw had to be stopped before he had the chance to kill again. That's the end of Chapter 1, and we're going to get into Chapter 2. Fireheart and Graystripe make it to the barn safely, tracking Ravenpaw's scent. Fireheart follows it to a gap at the bottom of the barn door. Quote, he sniffed, drinking in the smell of hay and the strong, fresh scent of cats. Ravenpaw, he whispered. When there was no reply, he repeated, louder. Ravenpaw. Fireheart, is that you? A surprised mew came from the darkness on the other side of the door. Ravenpaw. Fireheart squeezed through the gap, thankful to be out of the wind. The scents of the barn flowed around him, and his mouth began to water as he detected the smell of mouse. The barn was dimly lit by moonlight filtering through a small window high under the roof. As his eyes adjusted, Fireheart saw another cat standing a few tail lengths away. His friend looked even sleeker and better fed than when Fireheart had seen him last. Fireheart realized how scrawny and bedraggled he must look in comparison. Ravenpaw purred happily as he patted over to Fireheart and touched noses with him. Welcome, he mewed. It's good to see you. It's good to see you, Graystripe meowed, pushing his way through the gap in the door after Fireheart. Did you get WindClan back to their camp safely? Ravenpaw asked. Fireheart and Graystripe had stayed with him during their journey to bring WindClan home. Yes, mewed Fireheart, but it's a long story. We can't... Well, what's going on here? Another cat's meow interrupted them. Fireheart spun around, flattening his ears, ready to fight if this newcomer was a threat. Then he recognized Barley, the black and white loner who had willingly shared his home with Ravenpaw. Hi, Barley, Fireheart meowed, calming down. We need to talk to Ravenpaw. So I see, Barley mewed. And it must be important to bring you across the moors in this weather. Yes, it is, Fireheart agreed. He glanced at the former ThunderClan apprentice, the urgency of his mission prickling through his fur. Ravenpaw, we haven't any time to waste. Ravenpaw looked puzzled. You know you can talk to me as much as you want. I'll leave you to it then, Barley offered. Feel free to hunt. We've plenty of mice here. He gave a friendly nod to the visiting cats and squeezed out under the door. Hunt? Really? Meowed Graystripe. Fireheart felt sharp pangs of hunger grip his belly. Of course, mewed Ravenpaw. Look, why don't you eat first? Then you can tell me why you're here. So there's a bit of a time skip. Fireheart and Graystripe go hunting. Post-hunting and eating a good amount of mice, all three sit down, and Fireheart asks Ravenpaw to tell them everything he remembers about the battle at Sunningrocks. Ravenpaw insists he saw Tigerclaw kill Redtail. Quote, Ravenpaw stared ahead of him, his eyes dark as he journeyed back in his mind to the battle at the Sunningrocks. Fireheart could see his confidence beginning to ebb. The black cat was losing himself in his memories, reliving the fear and the burden of what he knew. I'd been wounded in the shoulder, he began, and Redtail, he was our deputy then, as you know, told me to hide in a crack in the rock until it was safe to get away. I was just going to make a dash for it when I saw Redtail attack a RiverClan cat. I think it was that gray warrior called Stonefur. Redtail knocked Stonefur off his paws and looked as if he was about to sink in his claws for some serious injury. Why didn't he? Graystripe put in. Oakhart came out of nowhere, Ravenpaw explained. He sank his teeth into Redtail's scruff and pulled him off Stonefur. His voice shook as the memories flooded through his mind's eye. Stonefur ran away. The cat paused, unconsciously crouching down as if he were scared of something very close by. What next? Fireheart prompted gently. Redtail spat at Oakhart. He asked him if RiverClan warriors were unable to fight their own battles. Redtail was brave, Ravenpaw added. The RiverClan deputy was twice his size. And then Oakhart said a strange thing. He told Redtail, no ThunderClan cat will ever harm that warrior. I wonder if Stonefur is one of the kits that Oakhart brought to RiverClan in the prologue. What? Graystripe narrowed his eyes until they were yellow slits. That doesn't make sense. Are you sure you heard him right? Positive, insisted Ravenpaw. But the clans fight all the time, meowed Fireheart. What's so special about Stonefur? I don't know, Ravenpaw shrugged, shying away from their searching questions. So what did Redtail do after Oakhart said that? Asked Graystripe. Ravenpaw's ears pricked up and his eyes widened. He flew at Oakhart. He bowled him right off his paws and underneath a rocky overhang. I couldn't see them, though I could hear them snarling. And then I heard a rumbling sound, and the rock collapsed on top of them. He stopped, shivering. Please go on, Fireheart mewed. He hated putting Ravenpaw through this, but he had to know the truth. I heard a screech from Oakhart, and I saw his tail sticking out from under the rocks. Ravenpaw closed his eyes as if he wanted to shut out the sight and then open them again. Just then I heard Tigerclaw behind me. He ordered me to go back to the camp, but I'd only gone a little way when I realized I had no idea if Redtail was okay after the rockfall. So I crept back, past all the RiverClan warriors that were running away. And when I got to the rocks, Redtail was charging out of the dust. His tail was straight up and his fur stood on end, but he was all right, not a scratch on him that I could see. And he ran straight into Tigerclaw, who was in the shadows. And was that when Graystripe began? Yes. Ravenpaw's claws flexed as if he was imagining himself back in the battle. Tigerclaw grabbed Redtail and pinned him down. Redtail struggled, but he couldn't break free, and Ravenpaw swallowed and stared at the floor. Tigerclaw sank his teeth into Redtail's throat, and it was all over. He dropped his chin onto his paws. Fireheart moved closer to him and pressed his body against Ravenpaw's flank. So Oakheart died when the rocks fell on him. It was an accident, he murmured. No cat killed him. That still doesn't prove that Tigerclaw killed Redtail, Graystripe pointed out. I don't see that any of this helps us at all. For a heartbeat, Fireheart stared at him, discouraged. Then his eyes widened and he sat up, paws tingling with excitement. Yes, it does. If we can prove the rockfall story, it shows that Tigerclaw was lying when he said Oakheart killed Redtail, and when he claimed to have killed Oakheart in revenge. Just a minute, Graystripe interrupted. Ravenpaw, at the gathering, you didn't say anything about falling rocks. You made it sound as if Redtail killed Oakheart. Did I? Ravenpaw blinked and struggled to focus on Graystripe. I didn't mean to. That is what really happened, I promise. And that's why Bluestar wouldn't listen to us, Fireheart went on excitedly. She couldn't believe that Redtail would have killed another deputy. But Redtail didn't kill him. Bluestar will have to take us seriously now. Well, I don't know. Okay, but how are they going to prove the rockfall story happened? Fireheart's brain is whirling with everything they had discovered. He wants to ask Ravenpaw more questions, but Ravenpaw is clearly very, very anxious. So he just asks Ravenpaw if there's any more he can tell us. Ravenpaw shakes his head no. Fireheart tells him this means so much to the clan. Hopefully now we stand a chance of convincing Bluestar that Tigerclaw is dangerous. If she listens, Graystripe pointed out. It's a pity you told her Ravenpaw's first story. Now he's changed everything. She won't know what to believe. But he hasn't changed everything, Fireheart protested as Ravenpaw flinched at Graystripe's irritable tone. We misunderstood, that's all. I'll convince Bluestar somehow, he added. At least we know the truth now. So, they head back to ThunderClan. It's freezing outside, and the moon is close to setting, so it's pretty late in the night. Fireheart ruminates on the new story they'll have to tell Bluestar. She would not accept that Redtail killed another cat. Fireheart comes to the realization that they'll need evidence beyond Ravenpaw's story. Quote, the RiverClan cats would know, he realized aloud, pausing under a rocky outcrop on the moorland slope where the snow was not so thick. What? Meowed Graystripe, padding up to him to share the shelter. Know what? How Oakheart died, Fireheart replied. They must have seen Oakheart's body. They would be able to tell us whether he died from a rockfall and not a death blow from a warrior. Yes, the marks on his body would prove it, agreed Graystripe. And they might know what Oakheart meant when he said that no ThunderClan cat should attack Stonefur, Fireheart added. We need to speak to a RiverClan warrior who took part in the battle, maybe Stonefur himself. But you can't just walk into the RiverClan camp and ask, Graystripe protested. Think of how tense it was at the gathering. It's too soon after the battle. I know one RiverClan warrior who would welcome you, Fireheart murmured. If you mean Silverstream, yes, I could ask her, Graystripe agreed. Now can we please get back to the camp before my paws freeze completely? So they keep going, and they're almost at 4 trees when they're spotted by a WindClan patrol. Deadfoot, Tornir, and Runningpaw, Tornir's apprentice. Fireheart and Graystripe lie and say they picked up ShadowClan scent and tracked it into their territory, which concerns the patrol, but Graystripe quickly covers and says that it was an old scent and it's nothing to worry about. Luckily, the WindClan cats aren't mad. Tornir says that they're always welcome since they helped in the most recent clan battle and also because they helped bring WindClan home. So they wish each other well and continue on. That was bad luck, Fireheart growled as he and Graystripe padded down to 4 trees. Why? Asked Graystripe. The WindClan cats didn't mind us on their territory. We're all friends now. Use your brains, Graystripe, Fireheart mewed. What if Deadfoot mentions that he saw us to Bluestar at the next gathering? She's bound to wonder what we were doing out here. Graystripe stopped. Mouse dung, he spat. That's one of my favorite insults. It's the Warrior Cats version of SHIT. This is a all ages podcast, so I'm just gonna spell it out. Mouse dung, he spat. I never thought of that. His eyes met Fireheart's, and Fireheart saw his own uneasy feelings reflected there. Bluestar won't like it if she finds out we're sneaking around investigating Tigerclaw. Fireheart shrugged. Let's just hope we can settle all this before the next gathering. Now come on, we ought to try to catch something to take back with us. So, they try to hunt in ThunderClan territory when they get back, but they cannot find anything. And they've already been gone the entire night, which is too long. So they just decide to go back to camp and take the L. And they arrive at dawn, which is definitely too late. As Fireheart enters the camp, he halts so abruptly that Graystripe crashes into him and says, "Move, you big furball." Quote, Fireheart didn't reply. Sitting a few tail lengths away in the middle of the clearing was Tigerclaw. His head was sunk below his massive shoulders, and his yellow eyes were gleaming with triumph. "Maybe you'd like to tell me where you've been," he growled, "and why it took you so long to get back from the gathering." That's the end of chapter 2. Dude, Tigerclaw is so jobless. Get this man a job application immediately. Like, yes, he's the clan deputy, but at the same time, he's so obsessed with what they're doing. It's kind of insane. Like, get this man a job application, seriously. Put him on Indeed.com. Where's your resume? Anyway, chapter 3. "Well," Tigerclaw challenged. "We thought we'd hunt." Fireheart raised his head to hold the deputy's amber gaze. "The clan needs fresh kill. But we couldn't find anything," Graystripe added, coming to stand beside Fireheart. "Was the prey all curled up in their nests?" Tigerclaw hissed. He padded forward until he stood nose to nose with Fireheart, sniffed him, and then did the same to Graystripe. "So how is it the pair of you smell of mouse?" Yeah, they didn't really think about this. They should have, rolled in leaves or something to disguise their scent. Fireheart exchanged a glance with Graystripe. It seemed a long time since they had hunted in the two-leg barn, and he had forgotten that they might still be carrying the scent of the mice they ate. Graystripe looked back at him helplessly, anxiety making his eyes wide. "Bluestar should hear about this," the deputy growled. "Follow me." They have no choice but to obey, so they followed Tigerclaw into Bluestar's den. Fireheart could see the clan leader curled up, apparently asleep, but as Tigerclaw shouldered his way into the den, she raised her head at once and sat up. "What is it, Tigerclaw?" she meowed, sounding puzzled. "These two brave warriors have been out hunting." Tigerclaw's voice was thick with contempt. "They're full fed, but they haven't brought home a single piece of fresh kill for the clan." "Is this true?" Bluestar turned her ice-blue eyes on the young warriors. "We weren't on a hunting patrol," Graystripe mumbled. That was true, thought Fireheart. Strictly speaking, they hadn't broken the warrior code by not bringing back any prey, but he knew it was no real excuse. This is now the second time that Fireheart has been caught eating prey before feeding the clan. He's got to be smarter about this at this point. He's been in the clan long enough. If he's going to be sneaking around doing stuff, which as he should, he needs to be smart and not just do things without planning it out. "We ate the first prey we caught to keep our strength up," Fireheart meowed, "and then we couldn't find anything else. We meant to bring back fresh kill, but our luck was out." Tigerclaw gave a snort of disgust, as if he didn't believe a word Fireheart had said. "Even so," Bluestar meowed, "with prey so scarce, every cat should think of the clan before himself and share what they have. I'm disappointed in you both." Fireheart couldn't help feeling ashamed. Bluestar had brought him into the clan when he was a kitty pet, and he wanted to show her that he deserved her trust. If he had been alone with Bluestar, he might have tried to explain his real reason for being so late back to camp. But with Tigerclaw glaring at him, it was impossible. Besides, Fireheart wasn't ready to tell Bluestar about Ravenpaw's latest version of the Sunningrocks battle. He wanted to speak to cats from RiverClan first, to confirm how Oakhart had really died. "I'm sorry, Bluestar," he murmured. "Sorry fills no bellies," Bluestar warned him. Ah, yes. Ah, yes. My favorite line in all of Warrior Cats. Sorry fills no bellies. Every single mentor or older cat says that, because apologizing doesn't do anything in their world, which is stupid. "You must understand that the needs of the clan come first, especially in Leafbear. Until next sunrise, you'll hunt for the clan, not for yourselves. When the rest of the clan have eaten, then you can take food for yourself." Her gaze softened. "You both look exhausted," she observed. "Go and sleep now, but I shall expect to see you out hunting before sun-high." So, they agree, and leave the den. Graystripe says, "I thought she'd have our tails off for sure." "Then you should think yourselves lucky." The low growl came from behind them. Fireheart glanced over her shoulder to see that Tigerclaw was padding after them. "If I were clan leader, I'd have punished you properly." He thought he was so tough for that. He thought he was so tough. He, you know under, TikTok comments or Instagram Reel comments when there's, someone doing something really cringe in the video, and it's, they're trying to be really tough and edgy, "Oh, I'm so edgy, nobody likes me," or whatever, and people comment that one gif of the dog with, the mask on it. I'll put it in the video. But that's just what it reminded me of. Bro thinks he's so tough. Fireheart felt his fur prickle with anger. His lips drew back in the beginnings of a snarl. Then he heard a warning hiss from Graystripe and bit back what he wanted to say, turning away from Tigerclaw again. "That's right, kitty pet," Tigerclaw jeered. "Slink back to your nest. Bluestar may trust you, but I don't. I saw you at the WindClan battle, don't forget." He bounded past the two younger cats and pushed his way into the warrior's den ahead of them. So he's just rage baiting. He's not even trying to be "I'm the deputy, I need to, do this." He just fully just hates them. Graystripe tells Fireheart, "You're either the bravest cat in all the clans or raving mad. For StarClan's sake, don't wind Tigerclaw up anymore." Why is Graystripe blaming Fireheart for this? It's the thing when people tell you, like, oh, when someone's trying to rage bait you, it's like, oh, don't give them a show, don't give them a show. Like, I get that. And I think, yeah, Fireheart shouldn't give him a show, but is he just supposed to sit there and take it? I like Graystripe. Come on, man. Fireheart points out, I didn't ask for Tigerclaw to hate me, which is, yep, exactly my thoughts. Like, Tigerclaw just has always hated him since the beginning, so, which is not fair. So, they all curl up to sleep in the warrior's den. Sandstorm tells Fireheart she gave Tigerclaw his message, but says it doesn't seem like he believed her. And, well, we know he didn't believe her. She asks what he did to, quote, tweak his tail, awesome phrasing, but Fireheart just wants to sleep. She understands and doesn't press about this and lies down right up against him, which is very sweet. It is so obvious she likes him, Fireheart. If you don't open your eyes right now, I swear to God. Fireheart sees Dustpelt open an eye, snort, and turn his back. But Fireheart is too tired to care. Then we get another dream from Fireheart. Quote, Fireheart paced along the hunting trail. His body felt full of energy, and he opened his jaws to taste the scent of prey. He knew he was dreaming, but he felt his belly growl in anticipation of fresh kill. Bracken arched over his head. A bright pearly light poured down on him as if the moon was full in a cloudless sky. Every fern frond, every blade of grass glowed, and the pale shapes of primroses, clustering thickly beside the path, seemed to shine with a light of their own. All around him, Fireheart could feel the damp warmth of new leaf. The icy, snow-covered camp seemed 9 lives away. As the path began to lead upward, another cat stepped out in front of him. Fireheart halted, his heart thudding as he recognized Spotted Leaf. The tortoiseshell cat padded forward until she could touch her soft pink nose to his. Oh, brother. This again. She's still here? She's still here. What purpose does she serve? Besides giving Fireheart prophecies and reminding him of the quote-unquote love he lost. Fireheart rubbed his face against hers, a purr rising from deep inside him. When Fireheart first came to the forest, Spotted Leaf had been the ThunderClan medicine cat. She had been killed in cold blood by an invading ShadowClan warrior. Fireheart missed her still, but her spirit had returned to him in dreams more than once. Yeah, so, giving him dreams. Spotted Leaf took a pace back. Come, Fireheart, she mewed. I want to show you something. She turned and padded softly away, glancing around from time to time to make sure he was following. Fireheart bounded after her, admiring the dapple of moonlight on her fur. Soon they came to the top of the hill. Spotted Leaf led him out of the bracken tunnel and onto a high, grassy ridge. Look, she meowed, raising her muzzle to point. Fireheart blinked. Instead of the familiar span of trees and fields ahead of him, a shining expanse of water stretched as far as he could see. The reflected light dazzled him, and he closed his eyes. Where had all this water come from? He couldn't even tell if this was clan territory. The silver sheen flattened everything and hid the usual landmarks. Spotted Leaf's sweet scent filled the air around him. Her voice sounded close to his ear. Remember, Fireheart, she murmured. Water can quench fire. Well, yes, but also I have no idea what this might mean, so I think this is this book's prophecy of sorts, because if you remember last time, Fireheart had a prophetic dream about, like, cats and fire and stuff like that, and he heard Cinderpaw's voice screaming in his dream, and that all kind of came true, so we can only assume this is another prophecy, but water can quench fire is pretty vague. Startled, Fireheart opened his eyes again. A chill breeze fluttered the surface of the water, penetrating his fur. Spotted Leaf was gone. As Fireheart turned in every direction, searching for her, the light began to fade. The warmth went with it, and the feeling of grass under his paws. In less than a heartbeat, he was plunged into cold and darkness. So that's the end of his dream. Graystripe is calling his name and nudging him awake. He tells Fireheart to wake up. It's nearly sun high. Fireheart sits up. Most of the warriors had left the warrior's den already. Graystripe asks him if he's okay, because he was muttering in his sleep. Fireheart hasn't shaken off the dream yet. Quote, it was always a bitter waking to realize that Spotted Leaf was dead, and he would never speak to her again except in his dreams. Okay, man. Like, we get it. At this point, I could go on and on. We get it. I'm just gonna start saying we get it. Graystripe tells him to hurry up and leave for hunting, and Fireheart ruminates on the dream and the cryptic words of Spotted Leaf. Quote, Fireheart thought back to Spotted Leaf's earlier prophecy that fire would save the clan. As he followed Graystripe out of the den, Fireheart found himself shivering, and not from cold. He could feel trouble gathering like rain-heavy storm clouds. If the water that was coming quenched fire, then what would save the clan? Did Spotted Leaf's words mean that ThunderClan was doomed? And that's the end of Chapter 3, and that's where we're going to stop for today. I always seem to... I don't even pick exactly what chapters I want to read. I just pick, like, 4 or 5 to read, to make sure that all the episodes are relatively the same length or as close as possible. But I'm unintentionally picking good ones to end on because it's a cliffhanger. Yeah, so off to a pretty interesting start to this book. Tigerclaw is still as jobless as ever. Yeah, they got some good information from Ravenpaw on what happened in the battle that day, which we had never heard the full story of that happening before, so that was really interesting. We shall see. I mean, I think this book is just hitting the ground running. I don't think we're doing a whole bunch of filler in this book. I can only assume they're going to further investigate RiverClan, maybe talk to Stonefur, maybe, well, Oakheart's dead. I was going to say maybe they could talk to Oakhart, but they can't because he's dead. We'll see what happens next week. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next week when we see what happens next, and may Starkland light your path.